Welcome to Poets and Poetry. The purpose of this program is to promote and encourage the writing of poetry and to kindle a finer appreciation of this creative language art with introductions to award-winning poets and their poetry. I'm Leona Welch. Thank you for joining us. My guest is one for whom I have the greatest admiration and respect and have wanted to bring her to Texoma land for a very long time. It's an honor to present Roberta Pipes Bowman. Thank you for taking your time to visit with us today. We're so pleased to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay. A native Texan, born and raised in Rio Vista.
Yes.
Exactly where is Rio Vista?
It's about 50 miles south of Fort Worth, and it's in Johnson County at about 300 people, only it's growing now.
Oh, well, everything is spreading out from
Yes.
Metroplex, right? When did you move to the Fort Worth area?
In 1940, October of 1940.
Okay. Tell us about your education and work background.
Well, I finished high school in Rio Vista, and then I was at home a while on the farm, and I went to business school. You know, it was during the Depression and money was scarce, but I had a scholarship and I worked for my room and board, and I went 7 months to Brantley Drone, became a secretary. I went to work for a wire rope company in downtown Fort Worth, and then I attended business TCU at night, evening college. And when the company had to move to Houston, I came back and got a job at Pure Oil. And I still continued my education. I acquired a major in English, and I still lack a little bit getting my degree. But I majored in English and minored in psychology and art.
That's awesome. It just goes to show when your determination
Yes.
is there, you can get an education.
That's right, you can.
I know your dear husband passed away in March. How long were you married?
59 years
Oh,
in last January.
in January. Oh, such a special time, isn't it? You have two sons, one of which, David, was kind enough to drive you up from your home in
Yes.
Haltom City. Do you have grandchildren?
I have 4 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. Yeah, I have a great-granddaughter that's coming to visit me this weekend. I've not met her yet.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, it's such a
This is
delightful
so
time.
exciting. Yes, this is a new baby. Are there other poets in your family?
Well, David writes poetry.
Oh, well, wonderful.
And my husband had written a poem while he was in service, and it was read at his funeral and placed on his little brochure.
Oh,
And one of his favorite poems was Joyce Kilmer's The Rouge Bouquet. The Rouge Bouquet is a forest in France. And Joyce Kilmer wrote his poem in the World War I, and Elton was almost at the same place, and he wrote his. And he had never read, he didn't know who Joyce Kilmer was.
how ironic.
And we had that read, he wanted that read at his funeral, and Mr. Holcomb read it, and it was beautiful.
Oh, how special, how special. Okay, let's talk about a little bit of personal stuff for you. At what age did you become interested in poetry, and when was your first poetry published?
Well, I had always been interested in the religious songs, the songs that were sung when I was a little girl. And when I found out that God didn't write them, that people wrote them, I thought, well, how wonderful it must be to write one of those songs. And I wrote my first poem when I was 11. I had just finished a reading test, and my teacher came down and wanted to know what I was writing because I'd turned in my paper. And she read it and she said, this is good, and she sent it to the county paper and it was published. And everybody liked it, and after that I was hooked.
It don't take much, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Do you still have a copy of
Yes,
your
I
book?
do.
Would you read it? Did you bring it?
Yes,
All
I did.
right.
It's a little short poem.
Okay.
And it's a style that is my style now. And of course, at that time, everybody wanted rhymes and they wanted form. And that is in the rural areas. And it was written to my mother. My mother worked very hard. My father was blind, and we were sharecroppers. There is a voice that is sweet and kind, and never your friend will be that mind. She is always sweet and filled with love. On her hand much toil is shown. And when she's gone, you'll miss her, dear, for never your friend will be that near. And that was published October the 27th, 1927.
Oh, how special. How special. Do you have an interest in writing other than poetry?
Yes, I write prose too. I've had some short stories prose published, and I have a biography of my life from age 9 till I left home, and all the experiences during the Depression and the things that we went through. And it's at the publishers now, but I've asked for it back because they've had it 9 months.
Oh, that's not good.
And I've had no report, so I'm going to try another publisher. She is so busy.
Who?
Nortex.
Oh, okay, okay. I was thinking, we have a member down in Springs. Is it Counterpoint? Who is she?
Claire Ottenstein.
Yes, yes. That's who I was trying to think of. Do you enjoy reading literature, other literature besides poetry?
Yes, I like westerns and I like religious novels. Right now I'm reading a new novel. I mean, not a novel, but a biography of Ike's final battle when he had the struggle at Little Rock, and is written by Casey Pipes. We don't know if he's a relative or not.
How unique!
But it's a marvelous book. It's just out.
Oh, well, I haven't seen that one. So, okay, I would like to ask you, or if I should ask you, why you write poetry. How would you reply?
Well, I think it's like having measles.
Okay.
It's something you can't help.
I've never heard that analogy, but I love it.
It's something that comes to me maybe in the night or from a word or something that I've heard, or maybe if I'm having a dry time, I'll take a form and look in the thesaurus or something to find a word, just pick a word out and see what I can do with it.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I do like a picture form. I'm a magazine thumber, and if I see a picture of something in there, I clip it out, and I keep this in a big folder.
That's wonderful.
And sometimes, sometimes we go through something where words are just running rampant through your mind, and you just can't hardly grasp them. And sometimes I can just pick up that book and concentrate on a particular picture, and it comes to mind.
I've heard of people taking a little box and putting putting different things in it, and then they'll pull out and pick something out of the box, a word or something.
That's a neat idea too. Do you write every day?
I try to write every day. I haven't written much since my husband died, so I've turned back to painting some.
We have to have time to grieve when we lose a loved one. I know we do.
But I'll get back to it, and then it'll just all come flooding at once.
And that's good, because we have to write when it comes, because there's so many dry times sometimes. What inspires you to write?
Well, I suppose it was just an expression, maybe because I did a lot of meditation, and on the farm there was a lot of times when you're alone and with the animals and things that you have to do, and in the fields. And I really don't know, but it just came to me.
We just deal with it, don't we? Do you have a special place in your home that you go to write?
Yes, I like to write in my little office, my little 6x9 office.
Oh, that sounds comfy.
With all the books on the side and everything.
It's big enough for you, and it's small enough that the words can't escape, right?
Right.
How would you describe your style of writing?
Well, I think I have a quiet voice in my writing, And there's humor in there, but I do have a problem with humor because what I think is funny, everybody else thinks is serious.
I can't write funny. I don't.
Once in a while I write one.
Something. But it's more of a
Serious.
side.
And I like religious poems, and I like poems of nature and narrative poems. And I like the dramatic monologue too.
We'll touch on that in just a moment because I want to bring that point out. Is there, well, you just mentioned the dramatic monologue, but is there a particular form that you personally prefer writing?
No, there isn't.
Do you start with the words first, or do you start with the form first?
I start with the word first, and the idea.
The idea.
But if I'm writing for a form, I may put the form down, put down the pattern.
The pattern, right. Okay. And while we're on the subject of forms, I know you to be very artistic, having created a stretched sonnet form. Tell us about this form and how you came to create it.
Well, for one reason, for a number of years, nobody wanted to publish a form poem. They turned to free verse, and I began to study free verse, and I decided there was some structure in the free verse as well as a good voice. And I had these sonnets, and they didn't go anywhere. They didn't, and I knew that some of them I wanted to get into an anthology that I particularly liked, but I knew the editor would not accept a sonnet. So, we talk in 3-second spaces. And that's why long lines of poetry do not go over, because we lose our thoughts. And people who are autistic think in 4 seconds. And so you break the sonnet up into breath pauses or idea pauses. And it appears to be free verse, but it isn't. You feel the pull in there of the sonnet.
But it'll still have the rhyme in there of the sonnet.
The rhyme is internally, and I quit giving the contest because people couldn't understand that. They wanted to scatter it all over the page and everything. But it should appear as a free verse poem.
I see. Okay.
And usually about 28 lines.
Okay.
When you break it up.
Which would be twice the number of a sonnet. That makes sense. Now, I know for years you've sponsored contests for the stretch sonnet and the dramatic monologue forms in the annual offerings of the Poetry Society of Texas.
Yes.
What exactly do you look for in an entry?
Well, of course you look for originality, and you look for structure good. You look for it to see if it makes sense, if it pleases you and everything. Usually your need to get your hook in on the first line.
Okay.
Or the title.
Okay.
It shouldn't be just love or peace or something like that. It should be, ordinarily it shouldn't be.
Something will reach out and grab
Yes. And then the dramatic monologue, it's like, I don't know if you've ever been in a play or not, but I know you've been to plays.
Yes.
And the play will be, someone will step to one side and they will explain how they are feeling and what they're thinking about these other people or the situation, to be or not to be. And it reveals the character of the person and the situation.
On numerous occasions I have entered your contest. Never did anything with that stretch sonnet. I just I just didn't understand how it was working. Now I think I have a little better grasp on it. But you're no longer offering that one. You're offering another one.
Epiphany.
The Epiphany, yes. But I did come close in the dramatic monologue. I've won a second and a third in yours in there, so that's interesting. I want to mention that Ms. Bowman has numerous honors and awards. She is the 1998 recipient of the Hilton Ross Greer Outstanding Service Award of the Poetry Society of Texas, and this is the highest award that the Society offers. The Boswell Alumni Poetry Award at TCU, World Peace Award given by composers, authors, and Artist Association in New York City, where your poem was read at Lincoln Center Complex. How exciting. I believe you've had several Pushcart Prize nominations, as well as many winners published in the Poetry Society of Texas annual anthology. Besides your books, which we'll talk about in just a moment, where else might we find your poetry published?
Well, I have 11 books out. And of course, Galaxy of Verse has published quite a few, and Lucidity. And for a long time, the Fort Worth Press published a poem every day, and I had a lot of poems there. And I'm trying to think of some other places they might be.
Now, I believe you mentioned when we were talking earlier before, you've had some publications outside of the United States.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, in Cambridge, England. There were a number of Who's Who books put out. And then he ran a contest. I've forgotten the man's name who was at charge of it. But there were 6,000 entries in this contest, and the prize was $1,000, which is equal to about 5,000 or 10 now. And I didn't win that, but I got into the anthology. There were 5, and I had one of them. And then I belonged to the World Poetry Society, and it was published in India. And I had a lot of poems published in that, and I received a World Award from that.
Oh, how exciting.
And it's in my book, In This Our Times.
I see. Okay. Of all your award-winning and published poems through all the years, do you have a favorite?
Well, not really. There are so many. I have the little love poem in This Our Times that has been republished a lot of times, and I like it.
Did you bring a copy of that?
Yes, I did, but I don't think I have the book with me. It's in over here.
Okay, we'll catch up with that one later. The Poetry Society of Texas publishes a membership directory in the annual book of the year of winning poems, and I first found you listed in 1946 as Roberta Pipes, which would indicate you probably joined the society in 1945. I've heard some say you are the longest living member of the society. Do you know that to be true?
I believe it is.
I don't recall in looking in my research back of seeing anyone that I know of now.
Well, they did have Martha France. She joined back in several years before I did, but then she was not a continuing member.
Right.
And I am a continuing member. Of course, she's gone now.
I know, and she was a lovely lady, and
Yes.
as well. You've been a life member of the society since 1976. You still serve as a PST counselor and have served as an officer in many local literary groups of your area and PST chapters. How important do you believe participation in poetry societies to be for poets?
Get together, because you share ideas and you learn many things in meeting and exchanging, and then there is a community idea or something, a spiritual thing that happens, and you have to be careful and don't think of anything original, and somebody may pick it up in their mind.
Keep your secrets. Keep your secrets. But I'm like you. I do gain inspiration from being around other poets.
And when you read the poem to these people, to your friends, and maybe the family do not care to hear any of them, but you receive over work study group where they tear the poems to pieces, and not in a vicious way, but in a way to help them, and they have been very helpful. And sometimes just a word is all you need to change.
That makes sense. What a good idea. What a good idea. Okay, let's talk about your books for a moment. You said you have published how many books?
11.
11 books. Do you have a favorite among them?
Well, I guess Wind Be Still is my best book that I've published.
Oh, we'll talk about that one in a minute too, because it's, and I believe one of your books received the Lucidity Publication
Yes.
Award.
Yes.
Which one was that?
Welcome to Today.
Okay. Okay. Nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, your book, Wind Be Still, published in 1992, is such a beautiful collection of verse. This is my copy. You gave it to me a long time ago. 58 poems of events and impressions from the late 20s to the 90s. You've made history very important in this book.
Thank you.
One of my favorites is just inside the cover. Would you read it, please?
This little one right down here.
This little one right here.
Returning winds rise and gather fading petals, scatter amber leaves like dying dreams. The wind whispers through the trees and croons goodbye. Tomorrow, tomorrow, I bring new songs and fragrant hours from far away.
Oh, that is just lovely. That is just lovely. Do you have a favorite poet?
Well, right now I'm studying Ted Kooser. His poetry is so good. He takes the simplest things, such as making apple butter or the distant light in a farmhouse, and he makes it so beautiful. And he has a poem called The Beaded Bag, and it is the best poem I have ever read, exemplifying the love of a man for his wife and his daughters and the protection of a husband.
Oh.
It's beautiful.
Oh, it sounds lovely. Has any one poet had an influence on your writing?
Well, no, of course, all of the classics, and when I was 11 years old, someone gave me a copy of the 100 famous poems, 101, I believe it is. And I used to read them, and I read them to my little brother when he was growing up, and I read them to my children, and all of those famous poems.
How wonderful. Okay, let's take another moment to touch on another hobby. I understand you also paint.
Yes.
Has this been a lifelong endeavor?
I really think, as they said, the artist will find you someday if you have it there. And I had drawn quite a few pictures when I was little, and I'd watercolored, and I made cards in the back in early days and had them printed and sent them out. But I really didn't get into painting until in the 80s. I had always wanted some oil paintings to hang in my house. And I had one or two, but I couldn't afford the others. And I decided that when I retired, I would like to paint. And so I took some lessons, and I have sold a number of paintings. I've won some awards over at Dallas at the State Fair. And for one man, I painted over 120 saw blades for gifts for his Christmas present.
Oh my goodness! Oh.
And we made clocks out of the round saw blades. My husband put clocks in them. And when you paint and you sell, some of the people told me what they wanted to paint. Now, when I finish the painting, the children say, "Oh no, you can't sell that. Now, I want that." My house is full, and I have them in the garage and everywhere else, and behind the bed. And
I should have had you bring some up here for us to see.
I have some pictures.
Good. Oh, wonderful. Okay, now you just mentioned that you paint in oil. But you said early on you did watercolors. So do you work in both mediums now?
I don't do watercolors very often. I sometimes paint little cards to send people for special occasions. But I use acrylics mostly now because oils and the cleaning of the brushes and everything is a job.
I'm one of those people could not draw a straight line with a ruler. That is not my artistic talent.
Well, you'd be surprised what they can teach you.
Maybe I don't need a straight line, right? What kind of subjects do you prefer to write?
Well, I prefer to write something that's inspirational and uplifting, and something that